presupposition denier.
The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. On this Friday, June 7th, Ocon starts in a week. God. I fly on Tuesday. Fly over to, so next week shows will be, Monday's good, Tuesday no show, Wednesday I'll do a show from California, Thursday no show, Friday show from the conference, and if you're there you can join, and then the following week I'm not sure, whenever I have time, if I have time I'll do it. Then I have to go to Wisconsin, do an event on Friday, 2 weeks from today. And I'll be back. I'll probably do a show Saturday when I get back. So, and then we'll return to kind of a normal, if we have such a thing. Do we have a normal schedule? And we'll get back to that. All right. Let's see. What do we want to do today? Yes, I will talk about the debate I had with with Jay Dyer, but I'll do that later. I'll do that at the end when we talk about atheism. So we'll wait on that. What else do we want to talk about? I think that's all we got. So as usual, Super Chat is open. I'm taking questions. I'll answer all the questions you have. So feel free to ask questions on anything. Just don't ask me to justify what I have to say. But other than that, you can ask anything. And what else do I want to do? Yeah, that's it. Let's jump in. So these videos going around on Fox News, videos on Fox News that are going around on Twitter. But basically, where why am I saying what the hell? There are videos circulating on Twitter where immigrants are being asked, illegal immigrants, as they cross over the border, where they're from, what are they here for, what are they doing here, what is their attitude towards America, whatever. Quick, short questions, where they're going, which part of America they're going to. And to the horror of it is that most immigrants, at least at Fox's interview, are not coming here to seek asylum. Guess what they're coming here for? To vote for social? No, they're coming here to get a job. They're coming here to work. They're coming here to, go stay with their family and work. Almost all of it is about work. I mean, how horrible is that? It really is horrific. The idea that we've got mass immigration on our southern border, people who are coming here to work. I mean, what would you rather have? Immigrants who are coming here to seek asylum and maybe even live off the state and collect welfare, or do you want immigrants coming here who actually are going to work for a living? I mean, it's pretty clear, pretty straightforward, but the madness of people perceiving this as somehow negative. Oh my God. And of course, crime. Edward says, oh my, they're coming here to commit crime, really? Percentage of illegal immigrants who commit crimes is far less than the percentage of Americans, non-immigrant Americans who commit crimes. Like illegal immigrants are some of the most, some of the least criminal factions in our society, and there's a good reason. If they get caught, they get deported. They don't want to be deported. They want to stay in the United States because they want to work. The other thing that a lot of them say as they're walking along, and yesterday they were I saw a video of all these guys and where you from, and they were from Egypt and all kinds of places around the world. And they were all like, yay, go America, we're pro-America, we love America, we think America's great. And it's like they weren't saying this for the camera. They were saying this because they have just basically staked their entire life, their savings, their energy. They've just left their family, maybe to never see them again because they can't leave and come back because they're illegal, on living in America. Really, they're coming to America. They're crossing the desert. They're risking their lives. They're paying a lot of money to these smugglers so that they can mug an old lady. I don't know where you guys live and who you guys interact with, but, it's pretty clear why they're here. They're here because life wherever they come from sucks, because they're poor, because they want an opportunity to achieve something in their life, because they want to make their life better, because they want to achieve, they want to succeed. And this is, of course, this is still the land of opportunity. In spite of many of your efforts to stop it from being the land of opportunity, it still is the land of opportunity, and people from all over the world still want to come here, and that is a compliment still to America, and more than that, it's a compliment to them. So these are heroes who want to come to the United States to make their life better. The objectives morality is all about you wanting to make your life better, you wanting to, change the circumstances, to create circumstances where you can live the best life that you can. So how can them coming here be somehow wrong? Oh, because they're illegal. So it's a crime to cross the border. It's a crime to speed. How many of you don't speed? It's an irrational law, and their life is more important than sticking to an irrational law. Isn't yours? Would you violate a law if your life depended on it? Would you violate a law if by violating it you could make your life better? And they're taking a huge risk, and they will live in the shadows for the rest of their life, and they know this, and it's worth it to them. But here's a real question for you. Is the law above your life? Would you violate a law if in violating it you would make your life significantly better, and a law where violating it would not violate anybody else's rights? Which, of course, immigration is not protecting anybody's rights. There are no rights involved here. I don't know. To me, the answer is obvious. Of course I'd violate the law. I always said, if you hadn't allowed me to come into the United States legally, I would have found a way to come in illegally. I'll admit it. I wasn't going to let your stupid laws dictate the path of my life. And you want to try to catch me and deport me? Go ahead. I'll live with that. Yeah, it's I'm an admirer of people coming to this country legally or illegally if their goal in coming to this country is to work and to make their life better. All right, that should justify a lot of thumbs down. I mean, you gotta believe I am going to lose a lot of subscribers over the first 8 minutes of this show. But, as you know, the reason some of you at least come to this is I say what I think. Lots of unsubscribes. They're hitting that unsubscribe button faster than they can. All right. There you go. I'm a hypocrite on open borders. There you go. That's people who can't think. All right. Do you know that what did I want to say? Oh, I will say yes, for those of you joining now, I will talk about the debate later. So in the atheism part at the end of the show. I'll talk about the debate with Jay Dyer. I also happy, eager, excited to get super chat questions on immigration. Challenge me. You know that never happens. I never get actual questions on immigration on the super chat. The people who want to challenge me, the people who think I'm full of it, never ask questions. They never engage. They'll come in a chat. They'll say a few negative things, horrible things, and then they'll leave. Yep. Here we go, right? And come on, I challenge you. Debate me on the chat. Yep. All right. Well, Rob says, it's not like you've never said it before. It's true, but I keep getting new subscribers. So they might not have heard me say it before. So, there's always some new guy, new people who come on the show and go, what? He believes that? How did I ever subscribe to this guy? And they go and they unsubscribe. It's part of the fun is to see subscriptions go, bam, then go, bam. Overall, they're growing steadily, systematically, nowhere near fast enough, but suddenly they're growing. They're growing. We're heading towards that 40,000. I don't know when we'll get there. Sometimes I think soon. Sometimes I think, but we're getting there. Every month has been a positive month this year. Some months have been very good this year. So this has been a good year for added subscribers, in spite of those who unsubscribe. It's the YBS Friday Purge. I like that, Doug. That's good. Throwing a party. 50,000 I'm throwing a party. First we have to get a 40. Anyway, one of these days, we'll figure it out. Let's see. All right, so this is an uncontroversial story. It turns out that Russia doesn't have its hands full. So it is actually going to do a naval exercise. A naval exercise here, not far from where I live. They've decided to come here. They know I'm never going to go back to Russia. I'm never going to go back to Moscow or St. Petersburg. So the Russians have decided to come here, just around the corner, close to Cuba, somewhere in the Caribbean. They're going to have at least 3 Russian naval vessels. This has been announced by the Cuban Minister of Defense. They'll be arriving in the port of Havana next week for an official visit and a kickoff of exercises in the Caribbean. It probably will include a nuclear power cruise missile submarine and a couple of other ships, probably Admiral Gorshkov. It's a frigate. And maybe a replenished oil. I mean, whatever they've got left after the Ukrainians have decimated their Black Sea fleet, they're sending over the Caribbean. They feel it's safe over here. They might actually, by accident, try to lob a bomb into San Juan. Given again that I'm not going to Russia, they might want to come here. So I am getting on a plane next week and leaving the Caribbean and seeking refuge in California at Oakland. So there you go. I don't want to be here while the Russians are cruising around, searching for dissidents for dissenting voices to go after. It is pretty. I don't know what they're thinking, but it is a diversion, I think, from the struggles they're having in Ukraine. It is the news out of Ukraine is that the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back in the northeast, and that Russia's just losing thousands and thousands of troops, trying to grind their way for another inch and another inch of Ukrainian land. Russia is on the offensive. It is moving. Ukraine is on the defensive, but it is, God, this is the Russian way of war. You throw people in it, hundreds of thousands will die or get injured. So be it. You just keep throwing people at it. You just grind away, and you make progress slowly. And that's what they're doing in Ukraine. I think ultimately this will turn in Ukraine's favor. Maybe later this year, maybe next year, we'll see. But so far, the Russians just grinding. Yeah, Russians are going to be here, not far from me. They have said, so you can all relax, and I think this is tells you a lot. They have said that none of the Russian vessels are going to be carrying nuclear weapons during the visit or during the exercises. So they do not want another Cuban Missile Crisis. They do not want to appear threatening to the United States with nukes. Not their intention. They're not coming from that. San Juan will not be nuked. At least that. I'm glad, because then that means I can come back. After they've left, of course. All right. Yes, let's see. I don't know why this is not working. All right. The Houthis. Remember the Houthis? We talk about the Houthis periodically. Houthis in South Yemen. The Houthis in South Yemen had a big press conference, I think yesterday, hard to tell with the time zones, but I guess this morning, where they announced that they had carried out the first joint strike operation with the Islamic resistance in Iraq, which is, of course, the large kind of paramilitary group that is supported by Iran, that is based in Iraq and Syria. They claim that during this joint military operation, this joint strike, they struck several Israeli-linked ships within the port of Haifa in the northwest of Israel, utilizing one-way suicide drones. I mean, wow. However, it turns out, unsurprisingly for most of us, that no such thing ever happened. I think I would know if ships were burning in the port of Haifa. Basically, my parents live in an apartment, in a condo that looks, from the living room, you look out onto the port of Haifa. They're way high, and you look down, they're up on the Haifa mountains. And they would know. I would know. Everybody would know. It would be in every major publication. You couldn't hide this. Couldn't hide this. A big chunk of the population of Haifa overlooks the port of Haifa, can see everything that happens there. No such attacks, but more than that, no warning sirens. So nothing even approached the port of Haifa. Nothing came close to the port of Haifa. So basically, they figured out that there's so many just mindless people on Twitter that all they have to do is announce some grandiose thing that's happened, like the attack on the American aircraft carrier earlier in the week. And they just announce it, even if it has zero basis in truth. And if they just say it with enough confidence, a significant number of people will go, whoa, these Houthis, God, they're good. They could win. They're really powerful. I mean, it reminds me, this is a topic for later, but it reminds me of religion. You just say God, and that's it. Everybody, oh, okay, yep. There you go. Don't need more than that. There you go. The Houthis and the Islamic resistance of Iraq lying to us. I know it's unthinkable. I expected better of them. Really, I really did. Lying to us, bold-faced lying to us, not even pretending not to lie to us. There you go. All right, I'm trying humor today. I don't know if it's working. You guys need to tell me if my attempts at humor are working today. It's Friday. It's Friday. We need to lighten up the mood. We've been talking about war for months now. Here's a funny one. Again, I'm attempting humor. Here we go. Oh, God, Scott likes it. Oh, what have I done wrong? All right, so Mexico, I told you that Mexico has a new leftist Jewish, or from Jewish heritage, president, right? So Mexico has a Jewish leftist president who is pro-Palestinian. That's Mexico. El Salvador, you remember Bukele? We've talked a lot about Bukele over the years. Bukele, it comes from a Palestinian family. I think his parents or his grandparents are from Palestine. A lot of Palestinians and a lot of Lebanese in Central and Latin America and Mexico. He comes from a Palestinian family, and he's pro-Israel. So we have a El Salvador president who's from Palestinian origins being pro-Israel, and a Jewish president of Mexico who is pro-Palestinian. And all this shows is that it's all about ideas, people. It's not about your bloodline. It's not about where you come from. It's it's about ideas. It's about your choices. And you know, you're not automatically affiliated with the group to which your bloodline is related to. You're not automatically a supporter of Group X because your particular heritage. You get to choose. You get to use your mind and make choices. Some of those choices are bad, like the Mexican Jewish pro-Palestinian. And some of those choices are good, like the El Salvadorian Palestinian heritage pro-Israel. So it's great. You know, it's good to see that Bukele is more than his just Palestinian heritage, and that he sees the value in Israel. That is another good sign for Bukele. David says, who lives in Costa Rica, says, for the most part, Latin Americans have a more common sense view on Israel. I think that's true. I mean, I've met a lot of South Americans. Some of the most successful South Americans I've ever met are Lebanese. You've got a huge Lebanese community in Mexico. Most of them Christian, but Lebanese. Very large Lebanese community in Brazil. Salim Matar, who is one of the richest men in Brazil, is Lebanese. There's a number of other very, very wealthy. So Lebanese, and generally Arabs who left the Middle East and who came to South America have done very, very well in South America. So I think the richest man in Mexico is of Lebanese origin. So that is true also of the Palestinians. They've done well. So again, you're not the Palestinians' failure in the Middle East, but Lebanon's failure over the last 40 years, 50 years really, is not a consequence of of their genes. It's not even a consequence of their religion. You know, depending on how they take it, right? How they embrace that religion, what kind, in what form they take it. But it is fundamentally a consequence of the ideas they embrace and the kind of life that they want to live, and everything else, and the opportunities that they have. So you know, Lebanon was destroyed. Funnily enough, Lebanon was destroyed by the Palestinians. I've talked about this. The September 1970, Palestinians are kicked out of Jordan. They all go to Lebanon. They join refugee camps that are much smaller that exist in South Beirut, and they established the biggest refugee camps outside of Israel in Lebanon. And within a couple of years, they've started the Lebanese civil war and basically flatten Beirut and destroy the beauty and freedom that exists in Lebanon. It really is sad. So the Palestinians are responsible not just for the violence in Lebanon, but also for the violence in Israel. They've got a lot of, the Palestinians who stayed in the Middle East have a lot to account for, All right, let's see. Yes, latest from Candace Owen. We track here two important personalities on the right. I like to track Tucker Carlson, who, by the way, has been going on all kinds of talk shows and talking about his mystical aliens. The last one was recently where he said, look, all the religions have these mystical beings, not just God, but all these other angels and other things that exist. Maybe there's something to it, probably is something to it. I certainly believe there is something to it, he says. He doesn't have to investigate anymore. There are aliens among us, but they're not aliens from another planet. They're aliens from the domain of God, I guess, the domain of a different dimension, and they live among us, and they manipulate what is going on, and the elites or the authorities or government or somebody knows about this and hiding that information from us. And luckily, Tucker Carlson is here to share this with us. I mean, it is truly stunning how sane Fox News actually kind of made Tucker. They I guess restricted his complete insanity from taking over. And now that he's independent and he can say whatever he wants, he is truly nuts. I mean, truly nuts. So you should go check out Tucker Carlson talking about aliens in another dimension, interdimensional beings who travel, I guess, between God's dimension and our dimension or whatever. The mystical beings. They're not space aliens. They're not travelers in space. Pretty amazing. Anyway, Candace Owen, not to. Again, now that she's been liberated from Daily Wire, not to be outshone by Tucker Carlson. This is a tweet as of on June 5th. This is a tweet. The older I get, the more absurd the concept of dinosaurs roaming the earth until a great big meteor hit becomes to me. Oh my God. So I don't know what to make of that. I mean, it could be that Candace Owen is challenging the idea of a meteor being the cause of the disappearance of the dinosaurs. I mean, I'm interested in seeing what the alternative hypothesis is. I'm certainly not committed to the idea that the dinosaurs disappeared because of a meteor. I don't know. That sounds like the most reasonable conclusion. But maybe it was COVID. Maybe it was a virus. Maybe it was who knows what it was. But I do think that is not what Candace is talking about. I do think that the part Candace is challenging, now that she's older, wiser, has thought about this more, and that she's challenging the very existence of dinosaurs. A friend of mine once told me, this is towards the end of our friendship, as our friendship was diminishing. He told me as he was becoming more religious, he was an objectivist and then turned super Jewish religious. He said that basically dinosaurs' bones were planted all over the world by God in order to test man. Dinosaurs never existed. The earth is not as old as people think it is. It's what, according to the Jews, it's 5,500 and something years old, something like that. And God, according to the ultra-Orthodox, nutty parts of the Jewish religion, God actually, he's not a prankster. It's not a prank. It's a test of faith, right? So all of you people, Christians, trying to say, no, dinosaurs are consistent with God and consistent with God's plan. A lot of Jews say, well, 7 days in the Bible, it took him to create the earth until he created man. 7 days in Genesis are not the same as 7 days today. 7 days in Genesis are like 1,000,000 years each. All of that, the real religionists, the committed ones, I guess Candace, all of that are like, come on, people, why are you doing this? No, the Bible says 7 days. That's it, it's 7 days. Stop this attempt to appease the secularists by trying to present the Bible and God and the miracles as rational. Yeah, Frank, here goes Frank. He says, Earth is 4.5 billion years old. I mean, that is just a scientist's lie in order to undermine religion and true faith and the truth. The reality is the Earth is only 5,500 and something years old, or whatever the number is. Somebody might know in the chat. And everything else is just God testing you. And because you failed, Frank, you are going to hell. So an eternity of damnation. I was just listening to one of my new favorite books. I think I've talked about this, the reopening of the Western mind, which I really like. Of course, it's positive because it's the reopening. But it is really fascinating and really good. And you remember I talked about this a few months ago, and then I took a break to prepare for my Jordan Peterson courses on capitalism and finance. I listened instead of that book to a bunch of books on capitalism and finance just to brush up and to get ready. And anyway, I'm back to it now, and I'm again really enjoying it. And I just listened this morning to the section while I was on the elliptical, listened to his discussion of Dante's Inferno. You scientists, whatever, you believers in science, you're on some rung of hell. I'm not sure which rung of hell, but certainly some rung of hell out there. Anyway, yes, it truly is stunning. Candace Owen, a hero to some of you, and a heroine to, I think, many in the movement on the right, at least up until recently. Maybe still. I mean, she's got a huge, massive following. It's not sure about dinosaurs now that she's gained wisdom through age. Maybe she should have stayed young. Okay, give me our traditional 20 seconds. I could have sworn I lowered the air conditioning before I started, but not enough, it turns out. All right, it turns out that South Korea has discovered a vast oil and gas off its east coast. It will be one of the largest, it will be huge. I don't know if it will be one of the largest finds, but we're talking about a country that basically imports all of its energy needs. It is a huge importer of oil and gas. And this find, might, very high likelihood, contain as much as 14 billion barrels of oil and gas. It's a massive project which development of will cost about $363 million. They're going to start at the end of the year. So this is east of South Korea. So that puts it east of South Korea. That is interesting. If I'm doing my geography right, that's good. That's on the other side. So it's not quite between South Korea and China. It's on the other side of South Korea. It's more between South Korea and Japan. But this is amazing news, I think, for the South Koreans. The South Korea's got a dynamic economy, a relatively wealthy economy, but it's very dependent on imports of oil, and it's very dependent because of that on shipping, traveling through the South China Sea with oil and gas from the Middle East, or maybe they get natural gas from the United States through LNG. I don't know, but whatever it is, that a lot of it is coming from the Middle East, and as a consequence, very dependent on China keeping those shipping lanes open. The idea that South Korea could become, in a sense, energy independent, or at least be less dependent on importation through the South China Sea, is a huge boost to South Korea. It's a huge boost to geopolitical stability. You could even imagine, although I don't know that they do this, that they could be exporting some of this oil and gas to Japan, which is not that far. And of course, Japan gets its energy other than nuclear. 100% of it, oil and gas, comes from importation. So Japan and South Korea are in a fantastic situation. This improves their long-term future. They've got other problems, demographic primarily, but certainly in this sense, this is terrific for South Korea and for Japan, in terms of, and I think for the world. I think for all of us, the less, as we move into this future, sadly, the less dependent we are on on the reliability of shipping across vast distances, particularly if those distances include potentially hostile areas like the South Sea of China, or like the Suez Canal and the Red Sea and other places like that are in dispute and potential war zones. I think the better off, from a geopolitical stability, the better off we are. So good for South Korea. Talking about finding reserves of more material. I mean, this is the amazing thing. I mean, Alex has talked about the non-existence of peak oil, that we're far from peak oil. They keep being discoveries. Julian Simon, of course, the great economist, talked about that there is no such thing as finite resources, because the ultimate resource is man's mind. And we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of what this big ball of resources, which is the Earth, provides us. The extent of the resources is just on this ball. Never mind going out into space, access other balls. Just here, the extent to which the resources we have is stunning, and we haven't really scratched the surface. Well, we just saw South Korea has discovered oil and gas. By the way, just as an aside, it just occurred to me, I don't know, but I wonder where that oil and gas comes from. I guess God put it there. It couldn't be from, the decomposition of dinosaurs or other ancient beings. That couldn't be the source, right? Because the Earth is only like 5,500 or something years old, and dinosaurs didn't exist, and animals, prehistoric animals, probably didn't exist. And so I guess Candace would have to say God injected the Earth with oil and gas. And that presents a really interesting dilemma, because if God did it, if God actually put the oil in the ground, then do we blame God for the fact that like the Saudis got it all and the Iranians got it all? I mean, how come God is favoring the Muslims? I thought God was a Christian. So what's the deal with this bias towards Muslims? I don't know. This opens up a whole new line of investigation. Maybe God is on the Muslim side. Maybe he's Allah after all. I mean, you got to go by the evidence, right? You got to go by the evidence. Somebody let me know how I'm doing on humor today. I think I've exceeded my usual limit. Usually it's one funny thing in a show, and today, it's anyway. In Norway, God's country, they have now announced that they have found the largest deposit of rare earth materials in Europe. This is in the southeast of the country, southeast of Norway. Southeast is pretty north. If you remember, Norway goes like that. So it's pretty southeast is pretty north. Anyway, rare earth materials. These are the materials necessary for batteries, for a lot of high-tech products. These are the kind of materials that China seems to dominate and has the largest deposits in the world. Of course, we keep finding deposits all over the place, like in Montana and Wyoming. There's a huge deposit of rare earth materials in Mongolia. And now there's one in Norway. I thought there was also a discovery in Sweden not long ago. Anyway, this one's the biggest in Europe. 8.8 million tons of total rare earth oxides. This is huge. I guess let's hope that the environmentalists let them mine it. I think that's the big issue. And I guess this is, somebody says, aren't the Abrahamic religions all referring to the same God? Yeah, but you know, who does this God side with, right? Who does he agree with? Does he agree with the Jewish interpretation? Does he agree with the Christian interpretation or the Muslim interpretation? And if you go by oil, then it's clearly he's given a huge advantage to the Muslims, and he can't stand the Jews. That's obvious. If there is a God, he really hates the Jewish people. I mean, he didn't give them any oil in Israel. I mean, a little bit of natural gas just off the coast. And he keeps killing them. He keeps, like, trying to wipe them out. He, like, keeps assigning people all over the world to kill all the Jews, right? So, difficult. So I think you have to conclude he does not side with the Jews. All right, Norway, rare earth materials, it really does show, the more we look, the more we find. Every time they say, oh no, there's only this thing over there, people start looking because there's incentive, because there's a price mechanism, because the price of this thing goes up, because demand has gone up, and suddenly, guess what? We find more stuff. So, it's, you know, we don't have to worry too much about the Chinese controlling, over the long run at least, the rare earth material marketplace. Again, if we're willing to mine for it in the US and in Europe, there's plenty to go around. There's been no shortage. This is kind of a fun story. We talked about it yesterday, but it's worth repeating because it's just so cool. Talk about cool. And that's SpaceX, right? The Starship rocket blasted into space. It launched. The actual rocket returned to Earth. It didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It actually functioned exactly as planned. Now, of course, when it exploded and broke apart, that was according to plan too. Everybody knew, or at least the people in Tesla knew, that is what was going to happen. And they learned from it. And every time they blew up another rocket, they learned a little bit more about what it's going to take. And every step they improved. Every step they got better. This is how it works with technology and discovery of new things and development of new things. Every time they got it better. And yesterday's launch is the culmination of that process. And I don't know what it feels like to be an engineer at SpaceX and to see that happen. But I can imagine, can you imagine how satisfying that must be? That things are really going according to plan? I mean, people who say, oh, it exploded. Yeah, it was planned to explode. They knew it would explode. It was more interesting how it would explode, where it would explode, what exactly caused the explosion. That was what was interesting to them. They knew their first few attempts would not be successful. It's the successful fourth attempt that is mind-blowing and shocking and amazing and should be celebrated. And people are like, huh, they tried 3 times and failed. So yeah, they succeeded a 4th time, big deal. Really? This is what it's all about. And the idea, you could have, even just a few years ago, if you would have mentioned this idea of having a rocket, the size of this rocket, I think it's taller than the Statue of Liberty, the size of this rocket, going, going into space and then, dislocating from the payload, and then basically coming back down, flipping over, and landing. God. A completely reusable space vehicle that can ferry NASA astronauts to moon, for example, and then blast itself off the moon to bring them back. That's just amazing. This is stunning. So, congratulations to SpaceX. An amazing achievement. And I hope you guys are incredibly proud of what you've managed to do. Let's see. Boeing Starliner, not to be, in addition, I think this is 2 days ago, carrying 2 NASA astronauts, which had problems a number of times, actually has docked with the International Space Station on Thursday. The astronauts are safe. They got off. The space station is okay. Space tech, innovation with regard to getting into space and doing stuff in space, maybe because it's not heavily regulated, is doing very, very well these days. So pretty amazing. All right, God, from that I have to go to this? Really? Who put this program together? God. Donald Trump. Do I need to say more? No, really. Anyway, do you vaguely remember? I seem to vaguely remember that during the 2016 campaign, Donald Trump on several occasions, in a sense, used the line "lock her up," referring to Hillary Clinton and the fact that she was a criminal and needed to be locked up. A number of times, and indeed he got their audience to chant "lock her up," and then they would start chanting, and he would follow up, and this became part of the campaign, and he did it on several occasions, and people generally have a memory of this. They're pretty sure it happened. More than that, there's actually video evidence. Many people videotaped this of him saying it, and now it could be AI, could be, you never know, but no, we know, we remember, right? You remember? Maybe Scott doesn't remember. I bet you Scott does not remember. Anyway, Trump just said, I never said it. Never said it. He basically said that, he said, I didn't say lock her up. The people would all say lock her up, lock her up. And then we won. And I said pretty openly, I say, all right, come on, just relax. So he never said it. He denies saying lock her up. So again, this is the Houthi strategy. Tell a bold-faced lie. Tell it with confidence. Just say it. And your memories are wiped out. They don't matter anymore. Video evidence is poo-pooed, as you've probably done it AI or something. And it just becomes truth. So MAGA today is going to argue across the board, Trump never said lock her up. Trump never said lock her up. I will give Trump this, something positive about Trump. There you go. Trump, I think today in an interview, said that he would not seek revenge on those trying to prosecute him now, that when he became president, he would not use the Justice Department to go after his opponents. Now, he said exactly the opposite on several occasions in the past, unless I was hallucinating, but I'm pretty sure he said that. But today he said, no, he won't do it. He's trying to be presidential. He's trying to appeal to the middle. He's trying to appeal to independence. So he's toning it down, and he's trying to do better, right? So yeah, I mean, there you go. Trump is changing the past. He's changing the past, and of course, one of the things that people discover, I think a lot of people discover, bad people, is if you repeat a lie often enough, and you repeat it confidently enough, then people forget what the truth is and what the truth involves. And more than that, I think what happens is you start believing the lie. I think a lot of liars stop believing their own lie, stop believing their own BS. And that, of course, does damage to your cognition and everything else, but it's a self thing. So, you know, I don't think the Houthis are quite there yet. I don't think they actually believe they blew up ships on the port of Haifa. And, of course, if they watch Twitter, they've got a lot of confirmation. I'm sure there are pictures. I wonder if there are pictures on Twitter of the ships burning in Haifa. I'm going to check that, given that I know Haifa. And I know what the port looks like from the air. That would be interesting to find some doctored photos of Haifa port burning. When I lived in, well, as a kid, our apartment did not overlook the port of Haifa. It overlooked the Mediterranean, but in a different direction, not the direction of the port. Today, my parents overlooked the port. And when I was a student in Haifa, and we had a small condominium, our apartment, our little apartment, had a direct view of the port of Haifa. It was a beautiful view, almost as good as the view I have today. All right, Jack, this is kind of interesting. It sounds a little crazy, but this is, I think this is, Jack Dorsey did an interview, and he has a real point here. Anyway, so Jack Dorsey, this is what he said just this week on some kind of panel, some kind of interview, something. Lincoln Gaffney asks, Yaron, would you become PM, Prime Minister of Israel, if offered? Would I become Prime Minister of Israel if offered? Interesting question. If I thought I could get stuff done, that is, if the offer came from something that represented 50% of the Israeli parliament, or some significant number of the Israeli parliament, which would allow me to actually get things done, then absolutely, yes. Sure, I would do it. But if it was there just, I don't know, and then I'd have to fight and nothing would ever get done, then what would be the point, right? It's like when Mises was asked, if you became dictator of the world, what would be the first thing you did? I think I've told you this before, right? What would be the first thing you did? And Mises' response was, resign, right? Because you can't force people into freedom. So you can't force people to accept my ideas. You can't force them into freedom. So I would only do it if there was a movement behind it. There was something real behind it. There was some people were going to back this up. But it would be fun. I was once visited by a Israeli politician who was running for the Knesset and running for parliament, and he basically came and we sat down in the office and talked for a while. And I said to him, I said, look, if you ever win, if you become prime minister, I'll be secretary of, I'll be willing to be secretary of the Treasury. If you want to bring me in to run the economy or to liberate the economy, I will do it. I will do it. I basically gave him that. I said, if you can become prime minister, which he couldn't. And unfortunately, what he told me was, sorry, Yaron, I've already promised that job to somebody else. But funnily enough, let me actually, I'm gonna post something on the chat. I need to find it though. Funnily enough, on Sunday, 2 days from today, Sunday, I will be interviewed by the guy he had promised the job before I asked for it. So that's going to be a fun interview. I'm looking forward to it. Let me just, there it is. Let me find the link. I'll put the link in the chat so you guys can join us. It's going to be live. He's going to interview me live. I don't know if it's in Hebrew or not. I need to ask him if it's going to be in Hebrew or in English. I mean, obviously the audience will be small if it's in Hebrew, but I just don't. I'm sure his English is good, but I just don't know what his intentions are. But here's the link. One second. It's giving me a hard time copy pasting. All right, let's see if I can do this. Come on, this is not hard. All right. In conclusion, I know what my conclusion is. The conclusion is I need to buy a new computer, which I will do after I get back from Europe. I'm going to buy a new computer because this one is just at the edge. You know, it's just at the point where it might not go. Anyway, this is the link to the interview this Sunday. It's going to be at. Now I have to open up another window. Let me close this one, because if I open up another window while this is open, I don't know, who knows what the computer will do. His name is Gilad Alper. Gilad Alper. And he's a good economist. So I'm happy to cede the job of Secretary of the Treasury to him. I hope one day he gets it. I doubt it, but I hope he gets it. He's too good to get it. That's the problem, right? But he's going to be interviewing me. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. Probably Israel, the economy, Israeli economy, but also we'll talk about Gaza and other stuff. I don't know what his views are on Gaza and things like that. He is a libertarian, so you never quite know. It's at 1 p.m. It looks like 1 p.m. East Coast time. So if you're in Israel, definitely check it out. If you're not in Israel, still check it out because it might be in English, and that I think you'll enjoy it if it is in English. All right. What was I start? Oh, I was talking about Jack Dorsey. All right, let's talk about Jack Dorsey. So I'm never going to get a PC. God, I would never get a PC. Oh, I mean, really over my dead body. So no, what I need is I've got an ancient Mac Mini that it's done well, but it's pretty ancient, and it does have 64 gigabyte of RAM, which it needs. And what I need is an M2 Ultra, whatever, Mac Mini or Mac Studio, to run this, to run everything. And no, I need a Mac Mini. There's no question I need a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio. They're much, much, much more powerful. They can be if you align them right than a MacBook. And they take up less space, so it's a perfect machine. But I just need the new version. This is this machine is a 10-year-old model with souped up, and it hasn't been running for 10 years, but it's a 10-year model. 64 gigabyte. It's incredibly stable, but it's just. I can tell it's struggling. I've also got 3 monitors connected to it, which is its limit for its GPU. And what I want to do is I want to get. I'm waiting for the new M4 minis, to come out, and then I'll get that, or I'll get the M2 Ultra Mini, or I might get a Studio. You know, those are taller. They're quite expensive, so I might just stick with the Mini. All right. God, Robert, this is like insanity. Robert has a Mac Mini, and this is like, I don't know, this is like heresy. And on the Mac Mini, he runs Windows 10. I mean, I don't know, special place in hell, going back to Dante? Special place in hell for people who use a Mac to run Windows. I don't know. I feel hurt. I'm really hurt. All right, I should get back to the topic. We're going all over the place today. Anyway, Jack Dorsey said this. He says, this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but I think the free speech debate is a complete distraction right now. I think the real debate should be about, wait for it, free will. And we feel it right now, because we are being programmed. He says we're being programmed based on what we say we're interested in. And we are told through these discovery mechanisms, these are the algorithms, what is interesting. And as we engage and interact with this content, the algorithm continues to build more and more and more of this bias. But the algorithm, even if it's open source, is effectively a black box. Now, yes, I completely agree with Jack. A more fundamental question before we get to free speech has to be free will. Do we have it or don't we have it? And if we do have it, which I think we do, and I'm not sure what Jack's opinion is. Does Jack think we have it? Then are we exercising it? And too many people, the answer for that is no. But that is maybe the most important philosophical fundamental question out there. Do we have it, and are people exercising it? One is a philosophical question, the other is more of a political, sociological question, cultural question. Because if we don't have free will, then we're being programmed by AI, which was programmed by human beings who don't have free will. So that's like a massive contradiction. How did they do the programming? How did they gain the knowledge? How could they apply their reason when clearly, when they don't have free will? So, but if they do have free will, then are they exercising it? Which I think is the more interesting question, right? Because we all know we have free will, but are people actually using it? And I think there's something to what Jack says in a sense that I think too many people in our world are not using their free will. They might use it to some extent, like he even says, we're being programmed based on what we say we're interested in. But what we say we're interested in might be based on our free will, or might be based on, you know, somebody else feeding us this. But then are we being critical? Are we being thoughtful? Are we challenging what we are receiving? Are we engaging our free will to think, to evaluate, to observe reality, to integrate? Are we being rational? Right? And the answer to that is not obvious. In terms of, not in terms of any one particular person, but in terms of generally, right? So it is an interesting question. To what extent are people today going to be completely reliant on sources like AI? Right now it's on Google or whatever, without critically thinking about them, without challenging them, without using their own minds and their own knowledge, without checking alternative sources, and just relying on one. I mean, with Google, you get a list of answers, a list of websites. Let's say you want to, I want the definition of capitalism. Well, you'll get pages and pages of different sites that define capitalism differently, and you can scan them and look and see what makes sense. But with AI, you ask her, what's the definition of capitalism? It'll just give you an answer. And it's done. And is that it? That is a real question. You know, it's scary in many respects. It's not that AI is scary. What is scary is how people are going to use it. And if they use it as a new authority, then it is going to scare you. And you're going to have the woke AI and non-woke AI, right? Woke AI and non-woke AI. And that's going to be the determining factor of which AI you buy. You buy the AI that's consistent with your tribe. So AI will be tribalist. I mean, AI can't be objective because there is no such thing, right? To be objective, you have to be human. But people, I mean, we're tribal right now, and if we use AI to entrench our tribalism, God help us. We'll talk about atheism later, but for now, God help us. Let's see. I mean, somebody says that you're scared of AI. They'll overcome their fear if AI is telling them what they want to hear. very quickly. Remember we talked about Briahna Joy Gray and the debate she did where she declared that all Hamas wants to do in Israel is establish a mini United States. It just wants the opportunity to bring freedom to Israel, and it doesn't want to kill the Jews. It just wants to give them the liberties and freedoms that we have in the United States together in one big, beautiful state with the Palestinians. And then she went on a tirade against, what is his name, Konstantin Kisin, because he was the moderator, and she felt like she wasn't treated well. And she said the auditorium where this debate happened should have been bombed and destroyed. Everybody should die and everything. Well, she was fired. Maybe peak woke. I don't know, maybe. She was fired from The Hill, not a conservative publication, from The Hill. She was a regular columnist, had a regular show on The Hill. She was fired. Now, I'm sure she will interpret that as a Jewish conspiracy against her. I'm sure everybody will interpret it that way. But there you go. Another bad person losing their job. Can't say that's a bad thing. It's generally a very, very good thing. All right. There's a lot of people should be fired from The Hill. We can make a list, David. We can each make a list and send it over to The Hill and see what happens. But one is better than zero. I'll take it. All right. So in California, the legislature is putting together a bill to regulate AI. And the reason this is super crucial and important is that this is California. And the reality is that most AI startups and most AI companies are in California. And indeed, San Francisco is seeing a little boom right now, a little renaissance, because there's so much money going into AI startups that are basically based in San Francisco. And so anything California does in terms of regulating AI is basically going to have a massive impact on the entire industry. And maybe this will lead, I mean, if the industry is healthy and if it's rational, then the industry, I think if it is regulated, would leave California to somewhere else where they're going to be less regulated. But it's difficult. I mean, the talent is in San Francisco. The money is in San Francisco. It's difficult to leave the Bay Area, but maybe they would leave California if this is happening. So the proposal would introduce a number of restrictions on tech companies operating in the state. Definitely include OpenAI, Anthropic, Cohere. Those are the three big non-publicly traded AI companies, and Anthropic and Cohere you maybe haven't heard as much of, relative startups. And then also, of course, it would cover Meta, which is based in the Bay Area. It would ultimately cover Apple and Google, and I mean all of them, right? Maybe not Microsoft, because Microsoft is based in Seattle, but I'm not sure because Microsoft certainly has operations in the Bay Area. So I don't know if it would not cover them. In that sense, even if you leave the Bay Area and if you leave some engineers in the Bay Area, does it cover you? I don't know how these things work exactly. But this is a bill passed the Senate last month and is going to go to the General Assembly in August. It will include things like a state body. A state body. Can you imagine a state's body? A body organized by the state. In other words, I think a state body is called a committee or a regulatory agency. That is going to be in charge of making sure that the models that AI creates do not have a hazardous capability. And I'm sure the state bodies in Sacramento, the capital of California, know how to do that. They're at the cutting edge of technology, just like all other regulators. So there's going to be a committee. There's going to be a regulatory agency just in charge of AI, making sure it's safe. They'll also, they'll make sure that, for example, AI can't create biological and nuclear weapons or aid in cybersecurity attacks, right? there's a kill switch. It'll have a kill switch to be able to stop. Any AI company will have to design into the product a kill switch to shut it down immediately. So sad. All right. Let's see. There's this project which is interesting. Sadly, it's run by a bunch of central banks, not big central banks. So it includes the Bank of Thailand, the Central Bank of United Arab Emirates. It includes the Institute of the People's Bank of China and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. But it sounds like the Saudi Central Bank is joining this venture. All these are coming together to basically create a distributed ledger technology. So a distributed ledger technology, in other words, a crypto technology, basically create kind of a cryptocurrency that will allow transactions between these various countries, all managed by a consortium of central bankers. Now, I feel so good about this, right? Don't you want every single transaction that you make monitored by the Saudi central bank, not to mention the People's Bank of China? I mean, this is going to be great. This is going to be absolutely fantastic for privacy and for individual rights. This is kind of scary. Central banks are letting the private sector devise all kinds of crypto and all kinds of cryptocurrencies. And then it looks like the plan is to really create one superstructure of cryptocurrencies that is managed and run and overseen by a central authority, and then basically kill everybody else, right? Kill all the other privatized systems. I don't know how successful this will be, but it is a scary proposition. You do have some of the more authoritarian governments in the world embracing this, from the Saudis to the Chinese. It is supposedly just enable instant cross-border transactions cheaply, easily, without any penalty, but easy settlement. But again, it also means that whoever is running this will have visibility into everything. And I think digital cryptocurrencies that are centralized and that are, connected to the state, very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous to our future. All right, finally, maybe finally, we'll see. You remember the Gaza Pier? The pier that they built? $300-something million. And then, yesterday they came out and said, no, we exaggerated. Didn't cost that much. It's only $230 million or something like that. Do you believe them? Do they even know? Well, you remember it floated away. There was a storm in May in the Mediterranean, a really bad storm. And I'm told, Iran, you exaggerated. The Mediterranean is not like a lake. And all true. There are storms in the Mediterranean. Just ask Odysseus, ask the Greeks, ask seamen from ancient times. Yeah, there's definitely storms in the Mediterranean. It can get rough. But as I said at the time, it's not the North Atlantic. It's not the Pacific Ocean. It's not that big of a deal. Anyway, they built it so well that, again, it broke up. Parts of it drifted away, and it was a disaster and couldn't be used. Well, the U.S. has put another $25 million into it, and now it works. Now it works. Don't worry. Be happy. The pier is now working. And they haven't yet got any aid from the pier into Gaza, maybe in a few days, but the pier is back assembled. It's connected. They spent another $23 million. Could somebody just give me a piece of some of this? How much would it cost the U.S. Army to take the $23 million? Just, I don't know, give me 1%. I'll take it. It's not that much money. No, they're not in a sharing mood. Even when it comes to, I'm a civil engineer. I've got my undergraduate degree in civil engineering. I could give advice. I could advise on a pier. Anyway, that is the pier. Some good news. Just a few minutes ago, the Israeli Defense Forces announced that they killed a commander with Hamas's General Security Force last night in an airstrike in Rafah. So they are killing some of the top people within the Hamas organization. Still haven't got the number one and number two. They still need to get number one and number two in Gaza. And then, hopefully, they need to hunt down all the ones that were in all the ones that were in Qatar hiding over there, and they need to assassinate them one at a time. I mean, actually, I take that back. Why one at a time? If they can do it in clusters, even better. All right, let's see. Okay. We'll have to, I just see a new segment that I think will need for me to comment on. All right. That is the news. So let's talk a little bit about this debate I had and about being an atheist. And then I promise to take on your Super Chat questions. Please keep them coming. We're going to have a lot of time to answer them, so don't worry about that. Keep them coming, particularly if you can follow up Michael with like $50 and $100 ones. That'll be great, because that way we'll get to our goal much faster. I don't know why it's so hot in here today, but it is. I mean, the thermostat doesn't show hot, but I'm feeling hot. All right. So, confession. I just don't get religion. I really don't. So I find it very difficult. I find it very difficult to comprehend and to understand, and to really, to really engage with religion, qua religion. When somebody says to me, as the guy I debated, Jay Dyer, says, yeah, everything for me, he says, it's God. Everything, where does logic come from? God. Where does this God? God is it just seems like somebody is saying, where does something come from? From gremlins. Gremlins did it. They made it happen. Invisible gremlins, by the way. It's just, religion is so alien to me, I have to say. In the sense that, I became an atheist very young. I became an atheist when I was 6, 7. I know the range about when it was, because it was during a time I lived in London, and I was going to a religious Hebrew school, Jewish school. So I can date it approximately in terms of years. So I know approximately what age I was. But it really is. It really is pretty. What do you call it? It just never made any sense to me. I couldn't comprehend it. I couldn't grasp it. Of course, I still can't. But it really was this thing is a God, omniscient, omnipotent, and he is somewhere up there, and he does what, and it was like, this is, I mean, in the language of a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, however I was, it was basically, this is just stupid. This is dumb. And the reality is that if you want to understand human knowledge, if you want to understand how we gain knowledge and how we create concepts and how we understand the world, it is really to looking at children helps you do that. Children, when they start exploring the world, there is no super being out there that explains the stuff for them. Now, the parents guiding them, and of course, the more the parents just let the child explore and maybe help put words to the things that they're discovering, the better. But children don't need some Platonic realm of ideals in order to discover concepts, in order to start thinking for themselves. You really have to work on children to get them to believe in something like God. Like, you have to make an effort. I think that if you just raise children without it ever coming up, it never comes up, right? It never. There's never a time, I think, in a child's life or an adult's life where they go, wait a minute, there's something missing. Doesn't all the knowledge I've gained until now come from God? Something like that. It's like, it almost always has to be indoctrinated from outside. And that doesn't mean that atheists don't become religious. They do. But they become religious because somebody convinces them that they need it. Not because they have any kind of comprehension of the thing itself, of a God. All right, so I did this debate with Jay Dyer. Oh, God. Incredibly frustrating. I wish, so it's not the kind of debate I should do. It's not my strength. I don't know if it adds anything, particularly to the kind of audience that I think was attracted to this and that Jay Dyer attracts. If there were anybody there who was open-minded or interested, then my references to Ayn Rand and things like that is all I really want to do. And that's my point, is to get Ayn Rand's name out there and to say there is an alternative to this mumbo jumbo. And I think, I mean, you tell me, those of you who watched it, if I at least succeeded, in happening. I'm not, it's just that I don't think you get the most out of me in a debate like this, because half the time I don't know what he's talking about. I have no idea what he was talking about. I just don't know, partially because I'm not a philosopher. And yeah, Maurice, you told me, and once I watched the video of his, I knew exactly how this would pan out. And my goal was not to confront what he was saying. My goal was to present an alternative. And I don't think I played his game. But my goal was to present an alternative. And I think that I actually did. So, I don't think we engaged in trying to play his game, because I didn't buy into it. I basically said, my epistemology, that's just not relevant. Now, there's no question that somebody like Greg or Ben would do a better job just because, right? Well, but you have to justify your own assertions. You can't not justify it. But my justification for my own assertions is, going to the self-evident, going to your axiomatic concept. And that's right. So I don't think, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to justify. Now, granted, he has a different meaning of justification. But you've got to go to the source of knowledge. The source of knowledge is sense data. And once you reject sense data as the source of knowledge, and I said this at some point during the debate, there's nothing to talk about. There really is no way to go from that point on. It's a dead end. Right? Yeah, but Maurice says, I understand your position, but from his viewpoint, you didn't address any of your assertions. I agree, but I don't care. I wasn't trying to convince him, and I'm not trying to convince his followers, right? So the point of a debate like this is not to convince him, not to win the debate, particularly given the audience is all religionists. It's not to convince him. The point of a debate like this is to appeal to anybody in the audience who is open to something new, open to something different, is questioning and doubting the framework that Jay Dyer presents and saying, you know what? There's an alternative. I'm not there to convince his followers. And it's not a waste of time, because the reality is I wasn't on his channel. I was on an alternative channel, which is going to have many thousands of views. Some of them are his followers. Most of them are not. Now, most of them will be religious, because most of the people who follow that particular channel are religious. But you're not going to refute him on his own premises. So the point of doing any debate is not to convince the people who are convinced by the other side. Right? Yeah, that was the live. That was a fraction of the people. But let's say 94% voted in favor of his worldview, and let's say 10,000 people watch that, and it stays 94% favor his worldview. And let's say 6% of the 10,000 people who watch it, that's 600 people, go, cool. I never knew that existed. And I'm not talking about objectivists who vote on my side. I'm talking about people who just don't know, right? And go, yeah, and then of course there are other people who don't vote. But let's say it's 10,000 and only 6%. I only get to 6%. I'll take that. I'll take 600 people who basically are going, I've never heard of that. Let me pick up one of those Ayn Rand books that Yaron mentioned. And Jay actually said he liked the Romantic Manifesto, and he actually said that on a lot of the actual practical stuff, he agreed with me. So, I wonder if there's something here that I don't know. Let me check this out. That's what you're going for in a debate. The idea that you're trying to convince the diehard, the people who came to see Jay. No, I'm not trying to convince a single one of those. Not a single one of those. I'm trying to convince the few, the very few, and I'm not trying to convince them, because you can't convince them. I'm trying to intrigue. Put a question mark in front of the very few people who are curious, who are not completely convinced. That's what you do in a debate. Every debate. If I debate a communist, am I trying to convince the communists? No. I don't care about the communists. And indeed, if everybody who watches the debate is a communist, then they're all going to vote for the communist. They're never going to vote for me. Right? But I'm trying to convince the 2, 3, 4, 6, 10%, 20% who might be agnostic about the topic, or might not be sure, or might be open to a new idea. That's it. Right. So that is the way I view yeah, but you see, Kirill says he kept Yaron on the defense while not having to justify his own assertions vis-a-vis the tag argument. I didn't want him to justify his assertions vis-a-vis the tag argument. I mean, who would have that? What good would that have done? And then I would have said, that's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo, which is what I would have said. But what good would that have done? There's no value in letting him. And here's a point to you guys. If you're ever in a debate between an objectivist and a non-objectivist, right, on any topics, doesn't matter what topic, and there's a Q&A, and you're going up to ask a question, the only person you should be asking a question of is the objectivist. Because what you want in a debate is to maximize the time the objectivist talks. What you want in the debate is to give the maximum amount of time for the objectivist to answer as many questions as possible. What you don't want is the other guy to talk. He's irrelevant, really, because it's between the objectivist and the audience. That's the dynamic going on. So it drives me crazy when I do a debate and then the objectivist lined up and they ask my opponent, because they're going to get him. they have figured out an argument that I have not, where they're going to get him. They're going to catch him at a contradiction. They're going to convince him that he's wrong, which is exactly the wrong strategy in a debate. The strategy in a debate is always you're in front of the audience. You're trying to intrigue the audience. You're trying to convince the audience. You're trying to not even convince the audience. You're trying to just give them a taste so that they go and read something. And therefore, what you want is questions that help you do that, not gotchas to the other guy. And indeed, part of a debate is not the gotcha. It's to say something interesting and intriguing so your audience follows up on what you are saying. Well, I don't get this cross-examination BS. If he asks me a question and then I'm answering it and he stops me in the middle to cross-examine, that's absurd and ridiculous. I mean, I get that is, I guess, the rules of this type of debate, which I've never done before. But you can't keep cutting somebody in the middle when you've asked him a question and he's trying to give you an answer. Then there's no point in a debate, because you can never actually present your views. So absolutely, I'll speak all over him all day. And if that is viewed as bad faith, so be it. Again, I think it's viewed in bad faith. Yeah, it's how he does debates, not how I do debates. I've never done debates in that format of where he can cut me off after he's asked me a question. That is just bizarre. If he's asked me a question, the expectation should be that I give my answer, and then he can continue interrogating it. But he can't just cut me off in the middle of a sentence, because why ask a question? And how can you? I mean, they are used to everything being soundbitey and everything being, because everything's like wrapped up in a nice little envelope of God, right, whatever. But that's just, to make an argument takes time. You have to actually go through an argument. And what he did is not let me go through an argument. And that in my view is not a good way to do a debate. So I don't like this interrogation style. I like it when you do a debate and the moderator asks you questions afterwards. Yeah, I mean, he interrupted me in the middle of me answering a question. His question. All right, anyway, that was the debate. But more importantly, let's talk about being an atheist. All an atheist is basically, all you're declaring by saying you're an atheist is you don't recognize mysticism. You don't recognize faith as a standard. Now, it's true that some atheists then accept other forms of faith, right? So they have faith in, I don't know, New Age BS, or they have faith in the proletarian, or they have faith in other things. And there's a real sense in which they're not atheists. Now, I know atheist relates to theism, but it's generally a rejection, I think. It should be viewed as a rejection of faith. Rejection of all kinds of faith. Now, it doesn't tell you what the alternative to faith is. It just says rejection of that. Rejection of faith. But then what? And I remember being an atheist, as I was again from the age 6, but not having discovered Ayn Rand. It's a struggle. I think that what I was committed to was logic and reason, to the extent that I had a comprehension and understanding what those were. Constantly seeking knowledge. That's just who I was as a kid, reading encyclopedias and things like that. But thinking about morality. I thought about morality, but I couldn't come up with any alternatives to what was available. So I just accepted conventional morality, not because I didn't think about it, not blindly in a sense, but because I couldn't conceive of an alternative. I literally remember thinking, why should I live for other people? Why is altruism okay? And then And then basically saying, because what would be the alternative? And not being able to conceive that there could be an alternative. And just, okay, well, this is it. I can't think of anything better. And that's why I think when Ayn Rand came and said, here's something better. Here's an alternative. Here's a way to live based on reason, based on thinking, based on being rational and facts and evidence. Why I was so receptive to it. I was, in the beginning, not receptive at all because I was blown away by, what, there's an alternative? First of all, I didn't think of it. And secondly, nobody else had. That blew me away. But then, and this implies what? It implies all these other things, including capitalism and everything else, and self-interest. And it took me a long time to really let that really sink in. But so atheism in and of itself does not provide you with that. Ayn Rand does. And it liberates you once you have Rand's philosophy. Now, I know many of you came to Rand's philosophy maybe while you were still religious and then had struggled with overcoming religion. And I know most people don't become atheists until they're much older, and it's a much more difficult thing because you have to undo all that programming. You have to undo that whole frame of thinking, that whole way of thinking. I think it's much easier if you don't have it to begin with, or if you've rejected it at such a young age that it has no real impact on you. But it's not enough. What you need then is content. You need a positive. You need, okay, there's no God. That's kind of obvious. It's kind of silly. And this is why I have a hard time debating it, because it really does. It's like Santa Claus. It's what do we debate this, really? And I can't take their idea seriously. And I know there's a long philosophical tradition. I know that everybody's believed in God. Really, really smart people believe in God. People much smarter than me have believed in God. And I don't know. To me, it's just, what? But it needs content. And that's what Ayn Rand provides us. And once you don't have this religious baggage, then you're looking for truth in the right place. Because instead of looking for truth in an old book or in some kind of form of revelation, one form of revelation or another, in some convoluted metaphysical structure where truth lies somewhere, suddenly you actually have the ability, you have truth available to you because it's there. Your reason gives you access to it. Not through a process of revelation, but through a process of observing reality, a process of reducing things to concrete, to the facts of reality. And that is so powerful. And it's so liberating. It's so liberating. You, as an individual, have access to the truth. It's your mind. And there's no alternative to your mind. It's your mind investigating. It's your mind engaging with reality. And that is liberating, exciting, thrilling. And of course that, it opens up free will. If you think about free will in religion, you have to live with this contradiction. On the one hand, some religions say you have free will, but God is omniscient and omnipotent and he knows exactly what you're going to decide. And suddenly And suddenly here we are, and it's you can use your mind, you can make choices. Your life is in your control. You can decide how it goes, where it goes, what you do, what you don't do, what values to pursue. You create your own soul through the choices you make, through the values you choose, through the character you choose to have. And that is unbelievably powerful and liberating and true. And true. So to be free of the need for some kind of non-existent revelation that you have to accept on faith, and to be really committed to reason and rationality, opens the entire world to you. It puts you in control of your own destiny. It puts you in control of your own mind, your own character. Who and what you are going to become is now you. So, being an atheist is a beginning. But to take full advantage of what that makes possible, what you want is to be to embrace a philosophy of reason, and Rand makes that relatively easy. So go read Ayn Rand. And if you're interested in these philosophical issues that were brought up, read, here it is, Introduction to Objectives to Epistemology. You know, this is phenomenal. Read Opa Ayn Rand's, Leonard Peikoff's Subjectivism, The Philosophy of Ayn Rand. Read Leonard's course on induction. I mean, there's a lot of content. There's a lot of material, particularly if you're interested in philosophy. You can go as deep as you want to go. But I think the real value that objectivism provides is reason, free will, morality. Is your life is in your control, your life to live based on your values, your choices. You are the guide to your own life. And God, if only everybody took that seriously and actually did it and actually did live that way. Not everybody. If only everybody who claims to be influenced by Ayn Rand did it, then the world would be such a better place. But the best people who are not influenced by Ayn Rand, who are not directly influenced by Ayn Rand, do that. They live good lives, even without Ayn Rand, because they come to some basic understanding that reason is the way to guide their lives. They might not do it 100% consistently, but they do it pretty good. And they understand that implies that they should be productive, and they just live it. They just live it. And what a waste that we don't have more people doing that. All right, let's do some of your questions, or all of your questions, not some of them. We've got a bunch. We can definitely do more. Definitely do more. There's room for more. We're doing well in terms of the fundraising, but there's a way to go still. All right, Michael asks, $100. Thank you, Michael. Very generous. I disagree with something you said yesterday. Oh, that's not good. I'm kidding. About D-Day. And evil is never going away. Of course, evil goes away. The fight does end. Mankind is still in its infancy. 1,000 or even a few hundred years from now, evil will only exist in history books. I guess I'm not convinced of that. I think evil will always be there. You cannot guarantee that people will not evade in the future. I don't think that that you can eradicate evasion from human life. So I think you're probably looking at. I think certainly a dramatic majority of people will be good people and rational people. but I'm not convinced at all that, given that we have free will, that we're not determined, that thinking and being rational requires engaging the mind, it requires effort, requires energy, requires focus. Some people won't do it. And once you don't do it, it's a slippery slope to how evil you could get. All right. So I guess the commentators on the debate have given me the title of Master of Assertions. That's fine. As long as some of them, even a very tiny percentage of them, follow up on those assertions to figure out where they come from. Maybe they found one of them intriguing. That'll work. If they consider, the primacy of existence or the primacy of consciousness as axiomatic concept assertions, yeah, what am I going to do? All right, let's see, David. David says, can you define petrodollars? Are they relevant? And all petrodollars is a recognition of the fact that a long time ago, probably during World War II, with the deal between the Saudis and the Americans, there was a deal between the Saudis and the Americans. Basically, the Americans would protect the Saudi royal family. And in exchange, the Saudis will keep the spigots of oil open. And part of that deal was that they would use dollars as the means by which to buy and sell oil. That is, in the oil market, dollars would be used as the currency. Now, that was going to happen anyway because that was the dominant currency. Certainly after Bretton Woods in 1944, there was nothing really else to do other than that. Petrodollars are the dollars used in exchange, and we often refer to them as the dollars that Saudi Arabia and other oil countries in the Middle East, the dollar reserves that they have. They usually use those dollars to buy U.S. treasuries or to invest in America or to buy American companies or to buy American universities, which they seem to do quite well. But those are petrodollars. Those are dollars generated from the sale of petroleum. And in recent years, there's been an effort, primarily by the Chinese, to get some of these Arab countries to use other means by which to, other currencies by which to trade in oil. So I think the UAE and maybe Saudi Arabia have a contract with the Chinese for some oil to be traded in yuan. And, they will do that, but an overwhelming majority, it's not even close, of oil transactions happen still in dollars. And the reason is simple. Dollars, relatively speaking, relative to other currencies, the dollar is incredibly stable. Relative to other currencies, the expectation is it will remain stable and that it is a currency that you can use, you not just to buy petroleum, but then you can turn around and buy. You can use it in any country. Everybody wants dollars, right? There's no place in the world where you just can't, dollars are useless. You can't use them. Everybody's willing to use dollars. So so everybody uses them. Yuan, not so much. Do we know how stable they are? Do you really want to be holding Chinese government bonds? Do you really want to be holding Chinese currency? You don't know if they're going to deflate, inflate, what exactly they're going to do. It's an authoritarian government. The dollar, again, has a history. Yes, there's some periods of inflation, but generally it's stable. And indeed, over the period of inflation that we just experienced, what is interesting, is the dollar stayed very strong. That is, in spite of the inflation, people wanted to hold dollars, and they were willing to buy dollars, and drove the price of dollars, in terms of other currencies, up. So while the Chinese and the Russians are trying to push people to use their own currency, it's It's not going to happen, not on a massive scale. They're just not reliable enough. Now, I am a little concerned about central bank digital currencies, but I'm mostly concerned about the U.S. adopting it and using it to kind of track what we do and how we do it. So that's the relevance of it, of petrodollars. Not relevant to most things in life, right? Yeah, so the dollar is here to stay for the foreseeable future. There's no question. And it might still decline in value, so I'm not saying it won't decline in value. It's very, very high valued right now. I mean, particularly if you look at the comparison to the yen, to the Japanese yen. But even compared to the euro, compared to the dollar, to the pound. But unless the economy, the U.S. economy implodes or we get double-digit inflation, and there's complete political instability. Now, granted, who knows what happens if there's uncertainty about the presidential election, if there's political instability in the United States, if the United States is on the verge or experiencing economic collapse. If any of those things happen, then there is no question that then the dollar will really be hurt. But I think short of real political instability within the United States, short of a major economic collapse in the United States, recessions are fine, but a major economic collapse, the dollar is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It is as stronger than it's been in a very, very, very long time. Very long time. All right. Hopefully that answers your questions, David. Thanks for the 25,000 Costa Rican something. I'm not sure what. Michael, $50. Are intellectuals frustrated that their Platonic blueprint for dictatorship isn't working? It seems to work so easily in China and the Soviet Union, but all they can get here are mindless college students who grow out of it. Yeah, I'm sure they're frustrated to some extent, but also to say it's not working is not true. They all have good jobs, being the philosophy kings of the small domains that they have. The government is continuously growing in the individual liberty, particularly in the sphere of economics, is shrinking. So I think that a lot of the intellectuals are pretty happy. Remember, they're also not exactly facing the fact that what they want is authoritarianism. They just want more. They just want more statism, more involvement, more control, more of a say in how your life is run, and that they're achieving. So I think they're pretty pleased with themselves. Andrew, $50. Thank you, Andrew. We're getting close, guys. We're getting close to our second hour. We've got 7 minutes. 7 minutes to cover, what is it? $45 to get to $500, which is our goal for 2 hours. So if anybody wants to do $45 or two $20 questions and a $5, so we can get there, that'd be cool. Like to stay on track. All right, Andrew says, reason one may fall for religion as a child, one, respect for the trust for parents who are believers, may result in, I must be wrong not to know this extra dimension which they know. 2, what does it mean to be good is really only answered by religion. So I agree with 1, and 1 is, I think that's right, and that's what I said. Children encounter religion and find religion, and take religion seriously only, in my view, only when their parents hold the view and kind of insist on it and dogmatically pursue it. That is, children who grow up in a household of atheists will never invent God as children. Now, I'm not saying they won't become religious later on for all kinds of psychological reasons, but then it's not going to happen while they're kids. It's not something a child or even a teenager can conceive of. It's only if they're later on challenged in life and maybe have some psychological issues or maybe have some don't have a positive alternative, will they then discover religion? And that goes to your number 2. I don't think a child has any problem in thinking about what is good if there's no God. Like, so I don't remember ever thinking to myself, oh God, I've given up on God, so there's no source for goodness. It kind of was obvious to me that goodness is X. I was wrong about it. To me, goodness was altruism, which, is the standard thing that the culture had, But it wasn't like, I wonder where that... I mean, I did ask myself, where does that come from? And my answer was, I don't know. I did ask myself, does that make sense? And it didn't completely make sense, but I couldn't see an alternative, so I stuck with it. But I was never tempted to say, oh, well, since I don't know where this goodness comes from, then it must be God. There never was an option. Of all the set of options, never was an option. Now, I can see why adults do that, but that's only after the thinking has been corrupted. Only after the thinking has been corrupted. And I don't think an honest thinking child would do that. One, I accept completely. The authority figures around them, the people who they respect, the people who they've learned so much, the people they love, are all religious. It's very difficult not to be. And luckily, I was raised by parents who were secular. They weren't atheists, but they weren't really serious about it either. And then by the time I got exposed to people who were serious about it, it was fine, right? My grandfathers, both of them, were very religious. It's fine. It didn't pose. They weren't authority figures in any significant way. And my parents were never upset by my atheism. They were upset by my individualism, but never by my atheism. So I don't think number 2 kicks in for somebody young. I mean, I'm open to other people's experience, but for a child to think there's no source for good, so God, I just don't think that is a path unless they're already committed to God in one way or the other. All right, Wes, thank you. John, thank you for the sticker. Wes, thank you for the $50. And then Frank, $100. Really appreciate it. Frank says, for all your hard work and an alternative to the tiresome, tedious leftists. I appreciate that, Frank. Thank you. Although the guy debated today was certainly not a leftist. He was certainly a right-wing religionist. There's no question about that. And I think ultimately, if you pushed and go dig into his stuff, I think he's probably a conspiracy theory guy. Because that's the mind. I mean, again, religion eliminates the possibility of rational explanations for the world, so the irrational becomes much more tenable. But thank you, Frank. Really appreciate the support. You and Michael have really gotten us where we need to be. So we're not that far from our 3-hour goal as we close up our second hour. I will go for as long as there are questions. So 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever. David, after several quarters of jumping through the NFA's hoop, I am registered CTA. You gave me excellent advice to look at this process as a metaphysically given. Any advice moving forward, particularly regarding raising funds? Oh my God. Raising funds is very hard. It's a very hard process. You know, it's not something I would do. It's not something worth doing live here. I mean, if you want to get in a call sometime and we could chat about it, because I'd have to know more about what you're raising fund for, what kind of strategy you're looking at, what's your track record. How do you articulate that track record? What's it based on? There's a lot more information I would need from you to be able to give you advice that was in any way meaningful. I think anything general that I would do is just not specific enough now. So if you send me an email, we can schedule a call sometime. Happy to do it. If you're at Ocon, we can chat at Ocon. Otherwise, we could do a call. Just don't expect an answer from me in the next week or so. 2 weeks because of Ocon. So after that, sometime in July, happy to have a discussion. Andrew, Rand quoted a prominent Swede on his nation's attitude, which she called an evil psychology. It's not just socialism. You have to cut people down. Everyone must be equal. Make someone who's exceptional feel unexceptional. Yeah, I mean, there's a name for it in Swedish, a name for it in kind of Scandinavia. It's a Scandinavian attitude that in Australia, they talk about cutting down the tall poppies, right? Don't stick up beyond a certain thing. You'll be cut down. But there's a word for it in Swedish. There used to be, and I think this has changed in Sweden, and Sweden's a lot healthier today than I think it used to be. But there is a word in Sweden that captures kind of this idea that in Australia it's called the tall poppy syndrome, but in Sweden, maybe one of the Scandinavians on the chat can tell us, this idea that a real entrenched envy, a real entrenched attitude towards others and towards achievement and success and showing achievement. There it is, Z400 Racer. Juntelagen, but it's some I can't I'm pronouncing it right. The law of Junte, that's right. Thank you, anonymous user. The law of Junte. And yes, I think that was a big part of Swedish, I don't know, the culture, Swedish culture. I think that's changed. I don't think Sweden is anywhere near as egalitarian as it used to be. You're finding more and more very wealthy Swedes who are not embarrassed or shamed by their wealth, who live in really nice houses and drive really nice cars and are not afraid of it being keyed as they were a long time ago. I think Sweden is slowly, there are parts of the world that are moving in a better direction. Sweden, if you compare it to what it was in the 70s and 80s, is definitely moving in a very positive direction, away from socialism, not just economically, but also culturally, away from egalitarianism culturally. Now, maybe the Swedes will contradict me, and it's not that bad, but it's not that good. But I really do think it's significantly better. It's moving in the right direction. And this idea of law of Junte, or however you pronounce it, is no longer as universally applicable within Sweden as it used to be. Jennifer, so are you saying it is more difficult in modern scientific world to convince a child of religion than in the world of 1220? Are you saying it is more difficult in the modern scientific world to convince a child of religion? Yes. Yes. It's more difficult. To a large extent because a child today is just exposed to more ideas, more value systems. In 1220, it's just one thing. It's whatever your parents taught you, whatever the little community you were in, whatever variation of Christianity or Judaism or whatever you had, whatever the town you lived in, that was it. But today there are books, and there are videos, and there's the internet, and there's you can travel, and you can go out of your town, and you can go see other people live. So I don't think it's just the existence of technology in a sense of, ooh, look at that technology, there must not be God. I don't think it's that, or technology causes people to rethink God. I think it's, in our modern life, our ability to be exposed to just more ideas, more different ideas, more sets of ideas. And that makes it possible for children to think, my parents might be wrong. There might be other things out there. It's not that they have gained scientific knowledge yet, that we were talking about children. It's again that they can see that there are alternatives. And part of that is in science, and part of that is just in a culture that where there are alternatives. Kirill, I never believed in God. I remember when I was 2 years old and thought it was strange and ridiculous. 2 years old, that's ridiculous. And ridiculous that people closed their eyes, put their hands together, and started to speak to nobody. I didn't get it then, and I don't get it now. Yeah, me too. I'm with you, Kirill. But 2 years old, I don't have any memories from when I was 2. So I have no idea. I really don't have many memories at all, but I certainly don't have memories like that from when I was that young. I mean, I have memories of places, shots of things, but the only intellectual memory I have is being 6 and 7, rejecting God. That's the only real intellectual memory, and probably the only reason I have it is because I've been reinforcing that memory since then, right? I keep, hey, this is why I'm an atheist. I remember that. But yeah, it's bizarre, Kirill, and they still do it, in spite of all the science, in spite of all the knowledge, in spite of everything we have around us. They still do it, right? All right, James. I think this is a 2-part question. Let me find part 2. There it is. The dichotomy between talk and action on the left and right is fascinating. Republicans talk a big game about getting the government off their backs and not wanting handouts. Yet most welfare recipients are in red states. He goes on. While these hyper-selfish and productive blue regions attack wealth and prosperity, intellectually, they operate under it in their daily lives. Why are people so phony? It's a good question, but I think it's because people don't take ideas too seriously, I think is the bottom line. Because their ideas are lousy, and if they took it seriously, they would have to live lives that they don't want to live or that they find unappealing. So take the blue states. So the advantage of being kind of on the left is that you don't have to deal with the crap of religion. You don't have to deal with skepticism about evolution. You don't have to deal with skepticism about science. You could just be an engineer and be a scientist and get stuff done and be productive and achieve things. And not feel guilty about that. And then you make the money, and then the guilt kicks in. Because the thing that you are, taught that is wrong is to be self-interested and to not share your wealth and to be, in a sense, better than everybody else. But you know you're better than everybody else. So you live that life, but then you feel guilty about it. And that causes you to not be able to enjoy the fruits of that productivity, the fruits of that labor, not to enjoy it fully. And encourage you to vote left, and encourages you to give away a lot of money. And then on the right, the idea of how did you put it? Getting the government off their own backs. I mean, that's a floating idea. They don't really ever put it into reality. They don't make it real to themselves. They don't have a real sense of what that means or what that contributes. And they are quick to abandon it as soon as they need the government, whether it's they need the government through subsidies or whether they need the government through welfare. I mean, in that sense, the right has a lot less going for it. Because what it doesn't have going for it is at least applying reason and rationality to science and engineering and production. And this is why you find blue states where there's innovation and progress and much more production happening and much more productivity. And red states, not accident, are dependent on welfare, not because they have this belief in government. They're on welfare because they're dependent by their very philosophical nature. They're dependent on revelation. They're dependent on God. They're dependent on the Word. They're not self-reliant. And this is the sense in which, when conservatives say people should be self-responsible, they should take responsibility for themselves. Then what does that mean? What does that mean when they're denied agency? What does that mean when they're denied moral agency in terms of, well, not just moral agency in terms of being moral actors, but in terms of the beneficiaries when they can't be the beneficiaries? So what does it mean to take responsibility over yourself? Anyway, yep. And, anyway, let's see. Michael says, the guy you debated was so convoluted and dishonest. He just moving words around in a gotcha. At some point, you have to bring your own ability to see the truth to the table. Yeah, I mean, I think he believes the stuff that he says. And there's 2,000 plus 2,500 really since the day of Plato. There is this rationalistic constructs that exist that are easy to embrace, that are easy to repeat and mimic and engage in. And he's not doing anything different on you. He's probably super smart, and he's certainly got a lot of this down pat, and he's really good at regurgitating these ideas, and he believes them. And it's easy in the sense that 1,000 other intellectuals have done the same thing. They've written it all down. They've done it before over and over and over again. He's just one in a long tradition of Christian apologist, Christian, he's a Christian Orthodox. Orthodox, but he was a Calvinist before. It's just the same thing, recycled, and it gets the personality of the person. This is what they do. Andrew, I wasn't intended on insulting Swedes regarding envy. Why not? It's good to insult Swedes. I thought that quote was illustrative of the Toohey motive of cutting down the exceptional by elevating the unexceptional. Do you agree that that is still a societal problem? Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was a real cultural phenomena in Sweden. So in that sense, it was a good basis to insult Swedes once. But it is a cultural phenomena, particularly on the left. This is part of what egalitarianism means. This is the whole egalitarian project is cutting people down based on their ability. And that's what woke does, and that's what the whole egalitarian stuff is. And it's part of what people are turning against. It's part of what people are turning against. It's why they're rejecting woke, because they're starting to see that. And they're realizing, oh, wait a minute, that's what they're doing. They're going after Israel for its virtues. They're going after businessmen because they're productive. They hate me because I'm good. Oh, well, I'm not playing that game. And then, of course, the question is, where do they go from here? And my fear is if you look at for example, the Silicon Valley guys who are now all rallying around the right, at least some of them, like David Sachs, are bringing kind of the nuttiness that he had when he was a leftist to the right. So he's a shallow thinker, a MAGA tribalist, even though he's a successful venture capitalist. When it comes to his political, moral, geopolitical thinking, he is a tribalist. And if that's what it means to move from the left to the right, then I've been right all along. That is, in the end, the left can't win in America. And the right that evolves from rejecting the left will be even worse than the left was ever capable of doing. It'll do not worse than the left. It will do more harm than the left was ever capable of doing. Yep. And that's been my thesis all along, right? Everyone in the comments section from your debate this morning is saying J1 and you didn't come prepared for the debate. How can anyone honestly believe that what that mystic was asserting made any sense? I just explained it. Did I come prepared? Not in the sense that I have no interest in preparing, in the sense of, really understanding his arguments and really digging deep into his arguments and really trying to refute his arguments. It's not what I do in life. I'm not interested in going into that sewer, because I consider that an epistemological sewer. So I did what I wanted to do in the debate once I discovered who it was, because, this debate was kind of flung on me without... I told the debate organizer, I said, did we ever discuss this? Because I don't remember ever discussing this. I think he kind of worked through my system, assuming that I was being informed. And I kind of agreed to do the debate, not really knowing what it was. And then I discovered what it was 2 days ago. And I looked at who I was debating and was like, this is hopeless. And my focus was, I'm just going to say a bunch of objectives, not just a bunch of objectives. I am going to try to present an objectivist point of view about these things and refer people to Ayn Rand and hope people are stimulated enough to go to Ayn Rand. But I'm not into winning debates. It's not important to win debates. And the actual way to do a debate is to ask people before the debate how many people agree with each side. And then ask people after the debate whether they agree, and to see who changed the most minds. And until you do that, you can't tell who won or who lost the debate. That's what they do at that debate forum in New York where I debated Brian Kaplan. Right? And that's fine. The people who were there are already quite religious. All right, Colt. Objectivist philosophy changed my view on immigration. Excellent. I wanted to be consistent with valuing individuals, including those not from America. Thank you. My pleasure. I'm glad, as we've said often, one mind at a time. One mind at a time. I'll take you as a win, Colt. Raphael said, the Soul Forum. Yes, the Soul Forum is the forum in New York that does debates, and where they poll before and then they poll after, and whoever changed the most minds wins, which is the right way to do it. Michael, debating intellectual Christianity is like debating academic leftists. They both use abstract gibberish to pretend they made a point. Both Platonists, both at war with reality. Yes, I think it's very, very difficult. And again, the point was not to try to refute what he has to say. I really don't care what he has to say. The point was to introduce people to what I have to say. And did I do that well? I don't know. Sure, again, as I said, somebody like Greg or somebody like Ben could have done it much better. Michael, do people who vote for Trump know he's a threat to democracy, but they'll accept it because they think the barbarians are at the gates and we need a strong man? Yeah, a lot of people do. I don't know that everybody, but it's significant. I think there's a sense in which the better people vote for Trump because of that. That is the only semi-legitimate, I think, reason to vote for Trump, is if you believe that the end of the world is coming and the barbarians are literally at the gate, and this is the last chance. This is the Flight 93 argument in the 2016 election. I get that to some extent, and I think a lot of people do vote for him for that. Not everybody, though. Nick says, many want Israel to act like Batman after October 7th. The Joker kills innocents, but Batman refuses to kill the Joker out of principle. That is an evil principle. Yeah, it's a very disappointing aspect of Batman. of Batman. Even the Christopher, what do you call it, the trilogy, the Batman trilogy, which I thought was very good, but that was horrible. All right, Robert. This is my super chat recompense for disturbing everyone's Mac Windows sensibilities. I mean, you disturb the force. It was a real disturbance in the force. No question about that. I mean, owning a Mac in order to run Windows is just disturbing, period. Drewski. Candace Owen tweeted today to Briahna Joy Gray. Hey, Briahna Joy Gray. Would love to interview you. Feel like that could be fun. Yeah, they could both get together and talk about and discuss and debate how evil Israel is today and how evil how the Jews control everything. Unite all the anti-Israel, anti-Semites. Unite, come together. Yay! I mean, it's good. It's bringing them out of the woodwork. Maybe they can all kumbaya with Tucker as well. Robert says, San Francisco, Silicon Valley is testing the Atlas Shrugged hypothesis, and they're playing the role of Hank and Dagny to see if technological progress can outpace moral political decline. Yes, they are. And the reality is that you can for a long time. How long, I don't know, but much longer than what it appears in Atlas Shrugged. So the Atlas Shrugged hypothesis that the idea that you can keep going, pretty amazing how long you can keep going with Hanks and Dagnys, because that's what Silicon Valley is. It's Hanks and Dagnys, keeping the world going on their shoulders. All right, last two questions. If you want to ask a question, now is the time. And we are $90 or so short of the 3-hour goal. We're probably not going to go 3 hours unless you flood me with questions. So it's a pretty good outcome in terms of amount raised. Pretty good. Optimus Prime. This may be a tough question, but I think we should all check our biases occasionally. Have you ever criticized Israel over their actions against Palestinians, such as settlements or war crimes? Yes. But very little, because I don't think there's that much to criticize. So one, I don't think Israel commits war crimes, or at least it does not commit war crimes in any significant way. So I don't know what war crimes are, actually, put it differently. I have a very different view of war than most people. I don't know what war crimes constitute. I don't know how you define war crimes. I think the only thing I would define as a war crime is the gratuitous killing of civilians for no purpose. And I don't think Israel has ever done that, except individuals might have done it out of anger and spite, and then I'll condemn it, absolutely. And then in terms of actions against Palestinians, I don't think all settlements are actions against Palestinians. I actually think settlements are pro-Palestinian. I think that bringing these Jewish settlers with the know-how that they have, with their productive ability and their willingness to produce and create and build, to be the neighbors of Palestinians is a good thing, not a bad thing for the Palestinians. Now, I think this is why I condemn Israel. I condemn Israel when Israel confiscates the lands of Arabs. I condemn Israel when Israel, gratuitously imposes, Jewish traditions, Jewish law on the population, like when the Israeli government doesn't allow buses to run on a Saturday. But settlements, qua-settlements, are not a bad thing, are not bad for the Palestinians. They're quite the opposite. They provide jobs and opportunities for the Palestinians. What I oppose are settlements where the land is being stolen from individual Palestinians. So I condemn Israel for its many vices of collectivism. I condemn Israel for being a mixed economy. I condemn Israel for socialist elements within it. I condemn Israel for not respecting private property as much as it should. But I don't think it commits war crimes. And I don't think it generally, overall, acts, again, with some exceptions, against Palestinians. Like when this Israeli settler walked into a mosque, this is years ago, and just slaughtered, I can't remember how many people, just killed them all. Absolutely, I condemn that. There's no question. But that wasn't the Israeli government. It wasn't the Israeli people. It was one nutcase who did it and should be condemned and is evil, evil bastard. So that is my view. I agree about biases, but I'm willing to be challenged on any particular point of view that I have that you think is wrong. Give me an example of a war crime, and I'll tell you if I condemn it or not. Liam says, David Boaz from the Cato Institute died today. Yes, I saw that. My sympathies go out to the people who, to his loved ones and to the people his friends. I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment on. I mean, he did a lot of impressive things. There are a lot of things that I disagree with him. Yeah, I get why people are sad that he passed today. He was a real force, no question, a real force within the libertarian movement, very, very important within the libertarian movement, but ultimately allowed the libertarian movement to slip out of what you would consider his grasp. And we can talk about that another time, but he just died, and I think it's inappropriate for me to discuss his life. It's not for me to talk about that now. Ask me in a week. Frank says, isn't Trump the personification of America's resentment of government's altruistic bankruptcy, a superficial showing off? I mean, no, because I don't think that they resent government's altruistic bankruptcy. I think he's a personification of America's resentment against fill in the blank. I think he manifests American resentments against competition from the Chinese, against competition from new immigrants, but I don't think it has to do with government's altruistic bankruptcy, because he is a swamp animal. That is, he is part of the problem. Trump is part of government's altruistic bankruptcy. He helped bring it about. He is a piece of that. He didn't do anything while he was president to mitigate that at all. So, no, it's America's resentment against things they don't understand and don't want and can't explain. It's resentment against the mixed economy without really knowing what it is about the mixed economy they don't like. So, no, I think Trump personifies resentment against reality more than anything, because he's very much a primacy of consciousness kind of person. Optimus Prime says, thank you. That was a thorough answer. Absolutely, my pleasure. Apollo Zeus, is it worth voting Reform UK in the near election? Yeah, it could be. It could be. It depends on a particular candidate. Depends on what the alternative is. I definitely think that if you would have voted Labour, then I would vote Reform instead. I mean, what you really, if I think strategically, I like to think about elections strategically. If I think strategically, the thing you want to do is do what is necessary for the Tories to be defeated, but not by too much. You don't want to give Labour a landslide victory. So you want Labour to win, because I think it's really, really important that the right lose when they are so pathetic as the Tories have been. But you don't want to give Labour too big of a victory. So it depends on, in your district, how it plays out. Nate, what should be the standard to call oneself an objectivist? A basic understanding, application of the basic principles, or complete comprehension of the philosophy and ability to explain every aspect? Well, certainly not the second, because I think that is a standard that I think would be wrong and not very productive to hold, that you have to understand everything and explain every aspect and how deep, and you have to know it at Ayn Rand's level or Leonard Peikoff's level or just Greg Salieri's level. So that can be the case. It's a I'd say understanding, not just basic. It's an understanding of the philosophy and its application. Its basic principles and how they integrate together into a whole. You know, and seeing that as an integrated whole, acknowledging that you don't see any contradictions in it, that it fits together, and acknowledging that you don't know every element within the philosophy. I think that's enough. If you understand the basic principles of the metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, politics, and I think aesthetics, if you understand the basics, then I think it's okay to call yourself an objectivist. And you see them as an integrated whole, and you can't see any contradictions there, and you don't hold them in a contradictory way, then I think it's okay. And importantly, you know what you don't know, which is so rare. So many people don't know what they don't know. Andrew, do you consider Trump unelectable based on the election fraud claims alone? Yeah. I mean, I consider Trump unelectable based on a lot of things. But certainly his claim that he won 2020, given the evidence, makes him unelectable. His behavior during January 6th, which is, of course, connected to that, makes him unelectable. But what also makes him unelectable is his character. And that's the fundamental. And one of the most shocking things about the Republican Party is the party who yelled at everybody, Bill Clinton, it's all about character. It's character, character, character. This is why we must impeach Bill Clinton. Donald Trump, in terms of character, is 1,000,000 times worse than Bill Clinton. 1,000,000 times. And Republicans don't care in the country. They embrace him. So in terms of character, I don't know that there's been a president worse than Donald Trump. I mean, the guy's a real scumbag in his behavior. I mean, you know, he I think I can't sure if I told you this. He interviewed somebody I know for a job in administration, and during the interview, he bragged about screwing somebody in business who was in the same business as the person who was same business in field, not same company, as the guy was interviewing. And he bragged about screwing this other guy. And what a man Trump was, because he screwed him. Clearly an immoral action. And he was bragging about screwing this other guy. And the guy who was interviewing for the job was like, I could never work for this guy. I don't care how much they pay me. I don't care what job they give me. I cannot work for a guy who is, bragging about his immorality. And not his sexual immorality, which is unrelated to a job of president, supposedly. But his business immorality. What the basis on which he gained anybody's respect as a businessman. He built stuff. And his ability to brag about being immoral in business. Not just marginally immoral, literally cheating somebody. How could somebody like that be qualified to be president? He is a scoundrel. He is a bad guy. You wouldn't hire him. I bet any of you, every single one of you, including the Trump supporters, including the people who support Trump, I bet you if you had a family business and your income depended on it, you would not hire Trump as the CEO. You would not hire Trump. And you might lie to yourself right now and say, yes, I would. But you would not, when it came down to it, hire him as your CEO. And if you're not willing to hire somebody as your CEO or as your director of whatever, how the hell could you even imagine hiring him as your president? No, but there's a choice between only two people, and there's only two people, and you have to choose one over the other, and you don't have a choice. And oh, by the way, Leonard Peikoff. Come on, give an answer. Yeah, Deep with Diego says, I need to have my company go bankrupt. I'd hire Trump. Yeah. I mean, you would not hire him as CEO, and I would not want him to be a leader. And yes, that doesn't mean in the end of the day that you won't vote for him for president, because it's just an alternative between two people. But to defend him, to be excited about that vote, to be enthusiastic about that vote, you might vote and throw up at the same time. Okay. I get that. I get that some people do that. But how can you be enthusiastic? How can you be excited about it? Somebody said that this is what I said in 2016. Did I say this in 2016? You've got this quote. I said, according to Jason Adams, I said, I would not hire him to be my gardener. I think that's absolutely true. I would not. I mean, would you hire him to be your gardener? Never mind the CEO of your family business? Joshua, I live in Louisiana. I see the lack of good education and the prevalence of religion. Knowing the opposite of reason and the opposites of reason and faith, I think religion is the cause. Do you think there's a causation between what and what? Between the prevalence of religion and bad education? Yes, absolutely. I think a place like Louisiana is poor and has bad education and is not productive and is just not a productive place. And really, really bad education. Absolutely, a big part of that is religion. And there's it really is true that those part of the country where you see the more secular are more productive. They produce more. There's more wealth created. That's absolutely true. Religion holds you back. Religion holds you back. I don't remember saying the thing about the gardener, but it sounds like me. It sounds like it's something I would say. So I'll embrace it fully, and I believe Jason. I like it. I might use it again. Richard, when discussing AI earlier in this show, you said only humans can be objectivists. Did I say that? I think an AI model could be trained to be objectivist once it has robust reasoning, proving that mathematically would be. No, I don't think would be interesting. I don't think that's true. You can't be an objectivist without free will. You can't be an objectivist without consciousness. You can't be an objectivist without choosing to be an objectivist. And AI can't choose. And AI is not conscious, and it has no free will. And I'll also say that objectivism is not mathematical. It's not the case that you can mathematically prove objectivism. So mathematics is not reality. It's not reflective of all of reality. All right, I need to say some thank yous here, I think. I think I've missed some. Let me just check. All right, let's see. We got that. Volta, thank you, Volta, for the sticker, and thank you, Gail. Really appreciate that. And Shazbot is gonna $50. Thank you, Shazbot. Thanks for the advice on the debate questioning strategy. I will do that in the future. Oh, it wasn't meant to you, Shazbot. It's just generally in debates, the strategy should always be ask questions of the side you are for. The goal of questioning is not the gotcha. The goal of debate is not gotcha. The goal of questioning, the goal of a debate is to educate people about the thing that you are debating, the thing that you are advocating for. And then That was my point. Absolutely. Thank you, Shazbot. Mary Eileen, when both candidates are as bad as they are this election, why do people think that they have to choose one of them? Doesn't mean for sure I won't vote. I don't know. People have this idea that not voting is anti-American, or not voting is a betrayal, or not voting is abrogating a choice. No, it's a choice. It's a choice not to vote. Ayn Rand did it on several occasions, and I've done it on several occasions. Now, I'm not comparing myself to Rand, but Rand did it, and I think it's a completely legitimate choice, and it's certainly what I would do in this election. I could not pull the trigger for either one of these people. So yes, I know some objectivists are going to vote for Biden, and I know some objectivists who vote for Trump, and I know a lot of objectivists who won't vote at all. But I think you can make an argument in an election like this for any one of those. I think some are better arguments than others. I think some are better arguments than others. But I don't think, given how bad it all is, it's very difficult to get too excited about one or the other. All right. Daniel came in with a question just as I was wrapping up. Daniel says, when someone claims it's murder to abort a fetus, would a good response be, what does it mean to murder something that is not a conceptual being? Well, yes, although not a conceptual being and not really an independent being, not an individuated being. Yes, if they could understand what a conceptual being is, if the person you're debating even knows what it is, right? And getting somebody to the point where they can understand what a conceptual being, and the argument is that they will make is it's not clear that a baby, once it's born, is a conceptual being. So it's not enough. You have to have the individuating point, the fact that it's not an individual. A baby is starting to engage in what will become conceptual once it exits the womb. But you can't call it a conceptual being in the first moments of its born. And we don't advocate for killing babies. All right. Thank you, guys. Incredible on the Super Chat today. We met our goal. We exceeded it. So thank you. Great way to end the week. I will be back on Monday with the regular programming. We've got Bradley Thompson is joining me in the evening for our interview. And there will be a short news roundup at 1 p.m. on Monday. But it'll be 1 hour because got a hard stop at 2. And then Brad will be on in the evening. So think about questions you want to ask Brad. We can talk about presidents. We can talk about history, American history. We can talk about a bunch of stuff. You can ask Brad any question you want. So please bring your questions, bring your Super Chat questions. 7 p.m. East Coast time on Monday. And then Tuesday, I am flying to Okan. Have a great weekend, everybody. Really good weekend. I was thinking of doing a show tomorrow, but I figured, no, 5 shows, 2-3 hours every day is probably you've had enough of me. And I think I actually need to prepare for my Okan lecture. So I'm going to go prepare. I will see you all on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.